Hello and welcome to the first video on the channel. So basically it can only get better from here. Hello and welcome to kaisquarters, my quarters. And today I wanted to recommend basically two of my biggest passions in life. And those are books and video games. So for this particular video, I especially wanted to recommend video games for everyone, in the sense that you might not need to repeat a section too many times, or that in some cases you will not even die, basically. And I also didn't want to recommend the same IP, meaning that if you, for example, are a big Sherlock Holmes fan, I will not be recommending the Sherlock Holmes video games, even though they are wonderful and you should play them. So for starters, I will talk about the book The Hobbit and the video game Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. You are probably familiar with the book at the very least, but the novel is about a hobbit, a creature called Bilbo, who lives a quiet and comfortable life in a tiny hole, because he's very tiny, until a wizard approaches him and asks him to embark on a new adventure, and unexpected adventure, some might say. On the other hand, the game is about two young brothers who have to save their father's life, who lies on his dying bed, basically. And in order to do so, they also embark on a journey full of wonderful creatures and dangers. What these two works have in common is that fairy tale-esque element, but especially how the authors use this to talk about war and how some people have to face incredibly dangerous situations at some point in their lives, unfortunately, and what that does to a person. It also deals with the possibility of loss in somebody's life for the very first time, and the kinship that forms between people that go through the same sort of situations. And all of this covered in this wonderful fantasy, magical universe full of gigantic creatures. There are trolls, giants, spiders, so be careful about that if you're not a fan of the spiders. But basically they are both wonderful journeys. It's just what it is. On the other hand, I wanted to recommend the book We Have Always Lived in the Castle and the video game What Remains of Edith Finch. The novel is about an eccentric and very isolated family who live in a house that is believed to be haunted, especially after 3 of its members died they died poisoned, basically. And on the other hand, the book is about a young woman who returns home after many years to her family's ancestral home and has to uncover the secrets of her family's death, because her whole family has died in separate occasions for separate reasons. What both of these works have in common is the magical realism element, and once again how fairy tale-esque everything is, but it also deals with two broken families and the isolation that comes with it, as well as how imaginative some people are and how wonderful these families are because of it. Of course, it also deals with death and family dynamics, and both book and video game are very bittersweet stories, but also works that stick with you, at least in my case, because the characters are so wonderful, they are so charismatic and just so eccentric, they are wonderful. Now I wanted to recommend a video game for the fans of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. That would be the book, and the video game I would recommend is Animal World. As you may know, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland is about a young girl who falls into a literal rabbit hole following the rabbit and ends up living a bizarre adventure with strange creatures. As for the game, it is about a small creature, a blob of some kind, who is underneath a subterranean labyrinth, and it is very psychedelic, and the creature has this obscure purpose that you don't really know what it is. Now, what do they have in common? Well, they are very nonsensical, both of these words. Everything feels very oniric, it is psychedelic, it is colorful, it is very childlike as well, because for example in the video game, the game mechanics in itself are children's toys. So you, for example, double jump using a little bubble instead of simply pressing X 2 times. They both have very mysterious animals, and they are scary at times, surprisingly. I thought it was a bit scary. And what's funny is that both of these works are full of secrets and many interpretations. The video games has so many layers, and of course, so does the book. Now I wanted to talk about the book Coraline, and in relation, the video game Little Nightmares. Now, I'm not gonna be recommending nowadays that you read Neil Gaiman, but if you have already read Coraline, you have to play this video game. Coraline is about a young girl who moves to a new house with her parents, and they don't really pay too much attention to her, at least from a young girl's perspective. So she starts to wander around the house, and she ends up discovering a door that leads to a very bizarre alternate world. As for the game, it is about a young girl named Six who must escape this underwater vessel, gigantic vessel, and in order to do so she must survive awful conditions like hunger especially, but also captivity and abusive adults is what I would call them. So what do they have in common? Of course, it is the abusive adults for anyone who hasn't read Coraline, but also it is the fairy tale aspect to all of it. And these are all very surprisingly unsettling stories, especially because the main characters are young girls. You wouldn't expect to be surrounded by so many fearful things. We're talking about horrible people, horrible environments, and these children, these two little girls, are just helpless. So the world, you could say, ends up shaping them, and they have to learn their lessons for good or for bad. So now it is time to recommend two honestly wonderful works of art, and that is the book The Metamorphosis and the video game Disco Elysium. You may already know the basics, at least, of the book The Metamorphosis. It is about a young salesman who wakes up transformed into a human-sized insect. And of course, he has to adjust to his new life as an insect and what that means to his family, to his work. The first thing he thinks about is how is he going to go to work. And through this very surreal situation, you end up reading about what society believes a person is worth and how it values that, and how that affects even your mind and just the way you end up believing in your own worth. As for the game, the synopsis might not sound very similar to the Metamorphosis, but hear me out. It is about an alcoholic detective who wakes up with no memory whatsoever about who he is or anything about the world around him. And yet, he is a detective, so he has to investigate a murder in a very troubled city. What these two works have in common is how they delve into philosophy, how they delve into politics, into the purpose of life, even if it sounds cheesy, and labor and work and mental health issues, of course. Now it is time to talk about H.P. Lovecraft with At the Mountains of Madness. And the video game I would recommend is House of Ashes. In At the Mountains of Madness, an expedition to the Antarctica in the 1930s leads to the discovery of something very ancient and almost unfathomable. As for the video game, it needs 5 protagonists of the armed forces in the 2003 invasion of Iraq become trapped underground in an ancient temple, so you may know where that is leading. Of course, one of the things that they both have in common is that this is Lovecraftian horror. But I also like how in At the Mountains of Madness we have a polar desert, and meanwhile in House of Ashes we have a barren desert. Whoa! Both have a special focus in cabin fever. They are slow-paced and they delve into the inscrutable. And in case you are worried about House of Ashes synopsis, it does star one Iraqi soldier and his perspective, and unlike At the Mountain of Madness, it is a character-driven sort of story. And for the very last recommendation, I wanted to talk about a more contemporary book, and that would be What Moves the Dead. And the video game that I would recommend you playing is Dredge. So, What Moves the Dead is based on the short story of Edgar Allan Poe, The Fall of the House of Usher. And in this version, a retired soldier visits the home of 2 old friends after learning that one of them is sick. And when he's there, he realizes that the fauna seems to have contracted a sort of fungi disease. In the video game, on the other hand, a fisherman becomes the town's angler and begins to notice a strange phenomenon on the sea that seems to be affecting the fishes and happens especially at night. Now, what they have in common is fauna aberrations, but also we are talking about local towns, a contained thread within it, in an atmospheric and enigmatic story, full of charismatic characters and a possible mystery at the sea. Now, those are my 7 recommendations. I am really ill from my throat, so I hope you could understand something from there. And if you have more recommendations, please, I would love to hear them. Please comment down below if that's the case, and consider subscribing if you like this video. In this channel I will especially talk about books mostly, but I also love video games, I love films, I love theater, I love art, so you can expect a little bit of that as well, but mostly literature. So thank you very much, that would be all, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!